Hi everyone, Patrick Reagan here, writer and director of the Legend of Zelda fan film. And on this DVD we've included some really cool bonus features. And for this one, we're going to go into detail on the locations that I used and why I used them. This here, there used to be a trailer here that used to be my grandma's house, but they sold it. And this is Hickory Grove. This is where I spent a whole majority of my childhood. This is where I kind of lived, and I even used to stay here a lot, and this is where my imagination ran wild. This is what inspired a lot of locations in my films. This locations, is what inspired Mindworms, later Farmer Next Door, and Whispers in the Cellar, Last Taste from Winston Camp. And before all that, it really inspired Legend of Zelda. Because what I wanted to do with Legend of Zelda, I didn't just want to adapt the games, I wanted to adapt the feeling and the spirit of the games. Of, childhood exploration, imagination, going on adventures. Especially wanted to capture some of Shigeru Miyamoto's childhood that inspired the games. Because as a kid, he always used to carry a lantern and go into some little caves and explore them, which I will talk about later that we put in here as well. For certain areas, of course, I had to build some sets and use some blue screen, but I was able to really make do with a lot of these locations as well. Especially wanted to capture the spirit of other Zelda fan films like Sage of Darkness and Scotty Whitehurst's films. And I used to explore these woods, and I'd have imaginary adventures and pretend that as if I was Link living through Hyrule, very low-key of course. And I just imagined what it would be like to make a Zelda fan film here. Use these locations, use friends and family, and make it very much like we were filming an adventure and filming something of our childhood imagination. Kind of similar to Eric Zala's Raiders of the Lost Ark adaptation. They were filming their childhood and filming at all these locations, and it's as if they were living Indiana Jones. And here we were living Legend of Zelda. We use a lot of locations. Like some of this was Ordon. We used that for the Lost Woods. We had Maze Woods, Gerudo Valley, Death Mountain, and Kakariko Village. And we just had so many locations that were so great to use. It would have been too good of an opportunity to miss. And even right now, I plan on moving soon, but at least with this is my last film that I ever really made here in Hickory Grove, and I got to make the most of it because I've always wanted to do a Legend of Zelda fan film here. And of course I use this location for my other films, and then finishing off with Legend of Zelda here kind of made it full circle and basically finished something that I've always wanted to do for a long time. And so for this little mini documentary, I'm going to show you all the locations and describe a lot of them and how we use them, why we use them, how they were used, and everything like that. So let me take you on a little tour of our mini Hyrule. So one thing that was definitely a priority was to have Link's house be similar to that of a tree house, kind of like in Ocarina of Time, Twilight Princess, and a little bit of Wind Waker. And originally we had a different idea in mind, but then this ended up being better. We had this little treehouse thing. Well, this is like part of a swing set. So we used this for Link's house, and it was easy because we could just film the top of it. And then we could film him inside, as well as Leif as Nico. And even looking at the footage, like that music, that just hit perfectly. And with that footage and how it was color corrected and just the way it was shot, I don't know how to explain it, but it just looks so nostalgic. It reminded me of the early days of watching Zelda fan films. It reminded me so much of Sage of Darkness, which was a huge influence to me. And it just looked really nice. And of course you had to start out with Link sleeping, because that's kind of a mandatory thing for any Legend of Zelda that's very iconic, is Link's introduction is him sleeping in some way. You had in Sage of Darkness and Legend of Link, and why not put it in here as well? So right here, this is kind of used for multiple different areas. It's like over here we had some of that be like the path to the Sacred Grove, because over there, especially with that little bench in certain areas, it had such a bit of a weirdly elegant, haunting look depending on how it was shot. And over there, there's a little area that leads to like a gate, and we use that for whenever Link comes back and hears like the bells, meaning that there's trouble going on with the moblins. Another location far down this road is this little garden. You may remember this from my slasher film, The Farmer Next Door, but we use this for the garden in Ordon that Link and his friends, do their gardening and like their chores. So this is where two of them were.
Can't reach, you're short. Mine.
Oh, mine.
It's a little short man.
Mine.
Oh, beans. They let the cookies. They let the cookies out again.
And then we just film different locations and film different angles, and we use some CGI for the cuckoos, because, I mean, let's face it, that's like a cute moment from the video games where whenever you attack the cuckoos, they attack you back. This place might not look too familiar to you guys, and unfortunately I can't get to it anymore due to overgrowth, but this trail down here leads to the root cellar. You may remember the root cellar. You saw it in some of my short films. It was used as the mine in Mindworms, and I used to go over there all the time. I could not go in there. I had no intention of going there because it was kind of dangerous with all the spiders and stuff like that. But it was nevertheless a really cool location to look at because it looked very much like an old tomb. So originally I was going to do Ocarina of Time, I was going to make it where the Forest Temple was buried for many years. And if I ever did Skyward Sword as a prequel, you would see it, before it was buried. But we couldn't get inside of it, so we used it only for exteriors. And unfortunately, due to the fact that we couldn't go into it, I had to resort to using old photos and even some footage, like some leftover footage from Mindworms that I recolor corrected, which is very common. I mean, some of the sunlight footage at the beginning was reused from Whispers in the Cellar, so you just kind of got to do what you got to do. But this was a really nice location, and I thought it was perfect. It was also very reminiscent of Shigeru Miyamoto's childhood, because he used to get a lantern and go into little caves and explore them, and that's what inspired his Legend of Zelda dungeons. And so I wanted to have a little nod to Shigeru Miyamoto's childhood as well. And this here is a special location I used to visit quite a lot, especially whenever I would daydream, and I would always have this image that this would be used for a Zelda fan film.
Hey guys, you alright?
In fact, back when I was originally planning to do Ocarina of Time, originally I was going to have a scene based on the manga where Link would have a fight with Mido, and then he and his friends like Saria and a few original characters that I created would be sitting here and fishing and talking about Hyrule. Which, if I can recall, you had something very similar to that in the manga, where Link actually was wondering what it was like outside of Coherent Forest. Of course, I'd be using that in a later film, like whenever I move out of Mississippi, but as I was filming here with this film, I figured, this would be a perfect location to have after their first encounter with getting in trouble with Mayor Bo, and have just them sitting here fishing in the swamp. And of course, I had to kind of combine like some stock footage of the swamp that I had, and then I had to film, unfortunately, I had to film Link in front of like a blue screen just because of, issues beyond our control, like weather and stuff. But yeah, this is one of my favorite locations I used to visit a lot when I was younger, and I'm glad I got to put it in this film. And here is Hyrule. Well, okay, it's not Hyrule, it's the backwoods of Hickory Grove, Mississippi, but, this is like such a great place. As when I was young, I used to go and play out here all the time. I would like explore, have my own imaginary exploration, and I just imagine what it would be like doing this in a Legend of Zelda fan film. Because that's what this whole fan film was basically about, was kind of recreating our nostalgia and our childlike adventures and putting it on film. And so you had so many locations over here, like they were just perfect for Hyrule Field. I even got, a good amount of wide shots and stuff like that, like with the grass and the trees. And obviously I wasn't going to be able to give it the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings New Zealand treatment although I probably will whenever I do Ocarina of Time in Colorado, but this was still decent enough for the basic film that we're doing. And you may even recognize some of this, like some of this over there was used for the adventure stuff in the beginning of Mind Worms. And you also have the Rex car over there, and a lot of this was used for Last Tapes from Winston Camp. So I got to make some really good use out of this area for some films, and I got to use it some more for the Zelda film, which I've been having in my mind for a long time, and so it kind of ended up coming full circle. This here is another magnificent part of Hyrule, and magnificent part of my filming location. You know, if I was ever friends with Eric Zala when he was younger and when I was younger, I would definitely want to help him with his Indiana Jones fan film in this location. We even had those trees that are kind of like the tuning fork where Indy was running from the Habitas. But it also really served as Ordon filter. If you're wondering why I use Ordon but not the Ordon music, it's because, you know, I didn't want it to be set in Kokiri because, you know, Link wasn't going to be a kid in this. And so I had it set in Ordon, so it was like a regular village. But at the same time, I didn't want to use the Ordon music because it didn't really have the upbeat feeling that it had, so I used the music from Wind Waker. This place definitely looks different. Been a number of years. And while I'm just here filming this B-roll footage, I just felt like it was a nice trivia thing to point out that over there, this would have been Kokiri Forest back when I was originally going to do Ocarina. And over there, you can't really see it, but there used to be an opening. It's very overgrown. And that would have led out to Hyrule Field, the original Hyrule Field. And then over here, this would have been the entrance to the Lost Woods, where they would eventually see like the Great Deku Tree and stuff like that. Just felt like